No, this is not some dream, nor is it a relic from the past. What you're looking at right now specifically is the FS16 laptop by Vaio. When I was much younger, Vaio was a brand that kind of defined one of the top dogs in the premium segment of PC laptops, but then they kind of disappeared for a bit and I was like, ah. However, a couple of years back, they kind of came back and they kind of focused on niche premium laptops, and here we are with the FS series, which kind of represents their entry-level premium device. Now, specifically, the model of the FS16 we have here is rocking Intel's Core Ultra 155H series processor. We've got 16GB of LPDDR5X memory on board. We also do have Intel's integrated ARC graphics. This model does feature a 1TB SSD. Furthermore, we do get slightly dated Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2 standards, and finally this is a 16-inch Full HD Plus display. Now I am super excited to review this device. Keep in mind this is ultimately a entry-level premium device, so we're going to kind of review it in that capacity and see exactly what Vaio's been up to with the FS series, so let's get into it. A quick representation of the unboxing experience. At first glance, really I just get a plain cardboard box, but then you realize inside this box is a much finer looking black box with some Vaio branding. Looks really cool. Open that up, and behind some protective packaging, here it is, the FS16 in the flesh. My goodness, is this a fine feeling laptop. More on that in just a bit though. We also do get a 65-watt charging adapter over here with a Type-C finish, nice to see, and then of course some basic documentation to get you started. One of the most graceful things I immediately notice with the FS16 is just how well built this laptop is. You have a full aluminum exterior from top to bottom, and that gunmetal gray type color here just really complements the look and feel of this device. You've got a relatively sharp and also conservative design mixed together here. So this laptop isn't trying to look excessively fancy, but at the same time it has nice presence. I also appreciate the fact that despite being a 16-inch laptop, you have a relatively sleek form factor here. Now, it is worth noting, of course, that the choice of build quality as well as, of course, the large form factor laptops means you are going to have a somewhat hefty weight of 4.2 pounds, but that's well within the average of your typical 16-inch device. Starting with the top side, like I mentioned, you have this clean metallic exterior. There's no rough or unnecessary textures. It feels smooth to the touch. And then at the center, of course, you have the Vaio branding with some reflectiveness to kind of really add that glare and spark to it. I/O port diversity, for the most part, is pretty good. So on one side, you have a Type-C port with power delivery and DisplayPort functionality. You get a RJ45 port, which is very rare and pretty awesome nowadays. You also have a somewhat underwhelming HDMI 1.4 port, followed by another Type-C port with power delivery and DisplayPort functionality. And then for whatever odd reason, they've opted to give you a micro SD card reader and then a full-size one, which means you kind of get limited compatibility. Kind of was hoping for the full-size one, honestly. On the other side, you do have the primary heat exhaust vent over here, followed by a USB-A super speed port, and of course, the good old headphone jack. The bottom side of this laptop is my favorite part about it because you'll notice there are no air intake vents, which means you can actually use this on your laps like a normal laptop. Believe it or not, there's only a handful of laptops in the universe that actually offer this as a standard feature. Odd enough that I have to say that, honestly, but good job, Vaio. And then, of course, you do have two speaker grills, bottom firing, one on either corner. When you unfold this laptop, you get a immediate appreciation for the generous amount of palm rest space you get over here, courtesy of the 16-inch form factor. Also, that's further complemented by the metallic inner chassis here, and of course that grayish tone, which I really like. Now, I have mixed feelings about the trackpad. I mean, on one side, you've got a decent amount of served real estate, but then you do get a plastic surface finish over here, though fortunately there is little to no flex, which is nice to see. The clicks are tactile, but I did immediately notice that if you want to do a hard tap, you actually have to click pretty far into the right or left corner for it to register. Otherwise, you're going to have to rely on soft taps, which does take away a little bit from an otherwise great experience. The keyboard is pretty good for what it is, so you've got nice large keycaps, a good layout, the font is pretty easy to read, and of course, the keyboard is fully backlit. You also do get a 10 key pad over here for maximum number crunching productivity, and then then you have a power button which doubles as a built-in fingerprint sensor. Furthermore, you will notice that the actual key travel here is pretty impressive. You get a lot of keystroke per press. However, there is this looseness or finickiness with each keystroke, so while it's tactile, it feels a little bit more shallow when compared to some of the competition like Dell XPS or Lenovo's Yoga series, for example, but overall a pretty decent typing experience. The hinge quality here is best in class. I mean, there is practically no wobble. It is extremely well tuned and weighted, and it honestly is a high quality hinge that should last for the years to come. My only feedback here would be that it would have been nice to have an indent on the front side of the laptop so it's easy to actually open up the lid, but that's something that perhaps we'll see with a future model. Now, I do really appreciate the fact that you have a fully flushed glass encasing for the display here, which really makes it feel like a premium laptop. Also, the bezels are relatively thin, so you don't have much of a chin at the bottom, which is nice. You have nice immersive side bezels, again, very thin and narrow. And then at the top, a relatively thin forehead as well. At the center of which you have a decent 2 megapixel webcam or full HD webcam. And yes, it does have a privacy shutter as well. The display quality is one of the more compromised parts of this laptop. So, I mean, things start off well enough with a full HD plus resolution, a 16:10 aspect ratio, a high quality IPS panel with decent viewing angles, but then you realize you're locked with a 60Hz base refresh rate on a premium tier device. Furthermore, brightness definitely leaves a lot to be desired, roughly rating around 300 nits, which in my opinion, again, will not be enough in super bright settings, so that could have been better. Now, as far as the actual touch captivity is concerned, this is a very responsive touch display, and I really appreciate just how well it keeps up with the movement of my fingers. As far as color accuracy is concerned, you get a base 45% NTSC rating, which means colors, while good enough for most multimedia viewing, will not be appropriate for more color-sensitive activities. A quick recap of the technical specs we have configured with this specific model. So we do have Intel's Core Ultra 155H series processor. You do get 16GB of LPDDR5X onboard memory, though you can also spec that with a higher 32GB variant. And you do get Intel's integrated ARC graphics. It's also worth noting you have the option to get up to 2TB of storage from the get-go. Keeping in mind this is ultimately a general productive laptop, Vaio has done a great job at checking all the boxes and then some here with performance. So if it's general productivity like surfing the web, typing up a Word document, or watching 4K content, it's a super smooth experience. More demanding productivity like programming and code compilation, again, very fluid and smooth. We had practically zero issues even with the base 16GB model. Furthermore, if you're doing more graphically intensive things like Blender, for example, you'll find that light to medium intensive models actually perform quite well. Yes, you are going to have some frame drops, but that's expected, and given there's no discrete GPU here in a casual capacity, I was genuinely impressed. Even the most demanding of activities like multi-layer 4K video editing, this laptop absolutely crushes. You can stack up to 3 consecutive layers of 4K footage with basically no frame drops whatsoever in the timeline, and that is something that, again, is totally praiseworthy. Also, it's worth noting that the 32GB model would probably give you further capacity, allowing you to stack even more layers with little to no performance drops. Now, render times are also quite fast, which can be quite important for a lot of people, and I also like the fact that casual gaming is actually very smooth over here. So games like Counter-Strike Go 2, for example, can consistently run close to 60 frames per second at the native resolution on high settings, something that would have been considered impossible for most iGPUs a couple of years back. Moving over to thermal management, I really want to again give a shout out to the FS16 for having fantastic thermal levels. For example, under an unrealistic peak load, we hit a maximum average surface temperature just around 38 degrees Celsius, which is about 5 degrees cooler than the running average for your typical laptop in this form factor. Furthermore, a more realistic sustained load will yield you around 35 degrees Celsius, which again is 3 degrees Celsius cooler than most of the competition with similarly spec devices. Now, fan noise is a little bit more mixed, so the good news is the fan doesn't go on too often if you're doing low load activities, but under medium to high intensity workloads, you can hit noise levels around 50 decibels, which is quite audible and noticeable. In terms of self-upgradability, I've got bad news and then I've got good news. The bad news is the RAM is entirely soldered on board, so you cannot upgrade it and you're stuck with whatever you get out of the box. The good news is that you can upgrade the storage, so you've got two M.2 slots, one is obviously preoccupied but upgradable, and a second spare slot, so you can add plenty of storage to your laptop down the road. The FS16 features a 59 watt-hour battery, which realistically will get you around 10 hours of runtime with a general productivity use case. The speaker quality is underwhelming admittedly, so you do have a dual bottom firing speaker setup with 2 watts of output per speaker, which means that everything from the volume to the lows is just lacking that robustness that you might otherwise expect. It's been tuned by THX, but that doesn't really improve the quality of the sound here. Here's a quick sound test for reference. Yeah, she hates me now. I made mistakes, but now I don't ever want to be alone. I don't really ever feel at home on my own in the zone. That's the only way I know. Feeling low, about to blow back up. Here I never let the doubt creep in. Gotta pop a couple more aspirin. I don't think I'll ever let you in. Easier to break it off as friends. I don't really understand myself. I don't really understand me. With a $1,200 value for the configuration of the FS16 reviewed today, the fact is that Vaio has really considered areas where they want to focus on and gone all out. For example, this laptop has one of the best builds I've seen at this price point and in this class segment, having a clean metallic exterior from top to bottom that's well built, doesn't feel shallow or finicky in the slightest, is fantastic. The hinge quality is top notch. You get a decent selection of I/O ports as well, though admittedly things like the HDMI microSD card reader could have been improved over here. And then of course you also have fantastic performance that goes above and beyond your expectations. Now it's not a perfect laptop. The display is the biggest weak point with this device. I mean, having a 45% NTSC rating or a brightness just above 300 nits definitely leaves a lot to be desired. But despite those shortcomings, I think this is a great general productivity laptop that really brings the whole premium build to life. And I think that if you are looking for a machine that's going to be durable and last you for the years to come, the Vaio FS16 is a fantastic consideration. Let me know what you think of this laptop, and if you already own it, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. I will have product links in the video description below, so feel free to check those out. And as always, if you enjoyed the content, make sure you hit that like button, sub to our channel. It genuinely helps us grow and means the world to me. Catch you in the next one.